Let's give it up for Nathan. Come to the stage. Thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah.
I love that we finally get to host you.
That's thanks for asking. Yeah. I thought I got the call right yet. I wasn't sure.
So thanks for having me, Daniel. He's asked me several times. And I wondered what I'd talk for 10 minutes about. Like, no one's here in Bali, no one's come to this event to think, I'll spend $25. I want to get some value out. I thought, what can I share about? What can I share about my life that might have you discover something new in yours? And I thought about sharing about things like, I helped develop drones in the early 2000s. I was one of the first consumers in the world to have a drone back when having one was something that people thought was funny. They thought I was a weird nerd. And I developed a tech business, one of the first software as a service companies in the world. IT department as a service companies in the world. So it's like software as a service, but IT companies. And we bet on Apple before, when everyone used BlackBerry and Microsoft. And it was an incredible ride. We went national in 12 months and international 6 months after that. I've helped build $500 million horse racing empires, and I've helped run professional sporting teams, the Newcastle Knights in Australia, and I'm currently the Chief Technology Officer of the Papua New Guinean National Rugby League team. But I thought that what I would do is share about something recent in my life, and where it came from was I was sitting, about a week ago, I was in France in my camper van looking down this huge valley, and I could see the Mediterranean Sea in the distance about 4 kilometres away. And I was just hit with how lonely it was to live my life. Like, as a leader, how lonely that experience is. And that how would I ever explain this to anyone? You've got to actually have done it. And I've been travelling through Europe in my camper van for about 6 weeks on my own. And I'd spoken to my friend about how lonely it was, and the next day my daughter came and she said to me, in a question, she's 16, and she said to me, "What's it like to be hated? Why does everyone hate you? Like, how do you deal with that, Dad?" And I'd never really thought about it. I'd always shied away from being hated. I want to be liked by people. I want people to think that what I've created is valuable. But even inside of creating value, most people hated me or spoke in some way. They were triggered by me, just like Daniel just described. When I provide feedback, there's some trigger that comes from being around me. And I looked back through life at this completely newly because I'd never thought about it that way before. I'd always shied away from it, like I said. And when I was at school, I went to my 10-year reunion for high school, and a guy there was my friend, and he used to get drunk and violent towards me at school. And he pulled me aside at our reunion and he said, "Look, I'm really sorry about doing what I did. I just wanted to be you." And it had never occurred to me that that's why I did it, And when I built drones, one of the things that I decided not to do was get involved with putting weapons on them. One of the guys made a lot of money shipping drugs across international borders, even though he didn't tell anyone. He got rich very, very quickly. And I think to myself, what could I have done if I'd put weapons on it? Would it have changed the world today? Would warfare be different? When I built my tech business, I didn't care. I didn't care whether I was hated or not. I'd gotten so sick of being hated that and people were triggered by me that I became successful. But when I finally became successful, I called my friend and I said, "Bro, I've got $1 million in my bank account. Let's have a party. Like, let's celebrate that I have $1 million in my bank account." He was like, "Dude, no one's coming to your stupid party. Like, you just sound like a wanker." And I was like, "Oh, hell, okay, maybe I shouldn't be that way." And then, fast forward, and, a few years ago, I ran into this word called gaslighting. And I'd been fascinated my whole life with why people were the way they were. Why were we so mean to each other? Why did some people succeed and some people not? My childhood wasn't this, silver spoon experience. I grew up in a caravan in Alice Springs. I went to public school. I just got a golden ticket. And one of the things that had bugged me is, we speak so poorly in the world. We create so poorly, and ran into this word gaslighting, and all of a sudden I ran into a word I'd been looking for my whole life. And so I decided to read a book about gaslighting. How do you do it? Like, everyone just seems so susceptible to it. We speak to ourselves in a way that has us not succeed in life and others. And there was no book. Sadly, I went out and looked and I could not find one. And so I had to accept that if I wanted to read a book, I should probably write it. So I wrote a book on how to gaslight people. Like the world's first book on how to do it. There's a chapter in there on how to break a child down, like systematically. And the reason I did it was because I did the research, and that, this produces the most result. People were like, oh my goodness, that happened to me. My parents did that to me. I had no idea that that's what they did. And when I launched my book, I had to have security there. Like proper security, because there was threats on my life from people who were, afraid of this getting out. And it hit me, when my daughter asked me about what's it like to be hated, I realized that being hated has produced incredible success, triggering people into seeing something new. That's how we see the world newly. Like that, people resist change. We resist talking about things that trigger us. We protect our triggers. I see shirts around here, good vibes only. Well, we're not doing anything about, we don't need more good vibes. We need to deal with the bad vibes. We need to deal with the people who are crap at gaslighting. Like, get good at talking to yourself. Get good at talking to your friends. Like, let's change the world. And when you change the world, you're like Greta Thunberg. People hate her. She needs security. You're like Elon Musk. People hate him. I never hear anyone talk about loving Elon Musk. I get very fortunate that I get to hang out with a lot of people who are very, very, very powerful, where the law doesn't apply to them. I've been pulled aside by a government official to say, you need to create your own army, your own mercenaries. I've had SAS soldiers knock on my front door who are private security to threaten me. We need to deal with that. We need to deal with what it's like to be a leader. Like, we're all here in Bali wanting to change the world, and yet so few people put their hand up to deal with what it's like to have your life threatened. That's leadership. I am very fortunate that I've gotten to talk to a few people in this room about what it takes to change the world, and I've been very fortunate to sit in rooms with people who are changing the world. And I can tell you right now, when I look out there, the world is not going very well. I don't know if anyone's noticed it, but there's a hell of a lot of people who aren't willing to be hated, and judging leaders. And I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people who are leaders who probably shouldn't be there. So I'd implore all of you to consider, to give yourself the permission, maybe, just to be hated, and you might change the world.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Are you going to keep rolling dicks?
I've only got one.
I've only got one.
I'm not here to sell the book. I've only got one book.
He's here to sell it.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not here to sell the book.
I'm going to sell it for you. Okay. I've read this book, The Art of Gaslighting, and it's one of these books that you think, like, I've read reviews online, and I can see why you talk about the permission to be hated. So many people are like, why the fuck would any narcissistic prick go and teach someone how to gaslight and manipulate others? That's what this book does.
It does, exactly.
It does exactly that. Why the fuck would anyone do that? But see, when I read this book, it was like nothing I've read before, because I was sitting next to Louisa, I was reading it, and I said to her, this is like reading like a psychological thriller mixed with personal development. I've never seen that before. Like, I don't know how you'd make it into a movie. It'd be fucking weird. But it's a very cool book. So The Art of Gaslighting, because it comes out, and I think some of the points that you made about like manipulation, persuasion, it really depends on who it's for. If it's a self-centered thing, then we look at it as bad, right? But if it's used in a way, isn't that what coaching is? You're manipulating someone into more of what it is that they want. Louisa says it all the time. I use my hypnotic NLP language, and that's why we're together. But I was like, well, it's what you wanted, all right? Here we are, living a happy life. Gaslighting, baby. This is where it's at.
This is where it's at.
This is where it's at. So thank you. Thank you. Let's give it up for Nathan one more time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.